we decided to form a company together and say, well, let's start something together, and we'll see along the way.
So
Yep.
at that
Yeah.
time, you didn't know what you guys want to do.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so it was funny
Interesting.
because when we were talking outside, like a lot of people were interested about what we were going to build. They were like, "Oh yeah,
Mhm.
it's Docker V2. It's gonna be awesome." And we
Okay.
actually didn't know what we were going to do. The only thing we knew is that we had to talk to a lot of people, and so we started to do only that in the early days. We talked to people, we interviewed companies, friends, friends of friends, any company in our network who wanted to talk to us. We had
Mhm.
actually tons of interviews. I remember some days when we had like, I don't know, like 10 hours of interviews per day, something like that. It was crazy,
Ooh.
and we were taking notes. We were asking questions and taking notes. That's the only thing we were doing in the early days. And then after a few months, and over the weeks, we had a common pattern that was narrowing down weeks after weeks, and it was very interesting. So we zoomed into a problem that we were hearing more and more, and that thing
Mhm.
was really in between developing application and running application on prod.
Mhm.
Something happens in the middle that is very messy for all
Okay.
companies, small, medium, and large.
Mhm.
This thing is called, it has different names. Sometimes it's called CI/CD, sometimes it's called internal developer platform, sometimes it's
Mhm.
called I just need to get my shit to the cloud. But
Yeah,
basically, it's
that
basically
sounds
always the
familiar.
same thing. I'm sure it's familiar because every company we talk to, and it was interesting to see that big companies were just more advanced in solving that problem, but it was the exact same problem that small companies had.
Mhm.
And without, it's weird that on one side you have very powerful CI systems and infrastructure toolings, and on the other side you have complex and super advanced deployment tools that can do A/B and canary testing and all of that.
Mhm.
And you also have some advanced build frameworks and a lot of tools for debugging your applications. But when it's about CI/CD and actually instrumenting all of this and really put together create the glue in between all of those solutions, uh, it comes down to Bash scripts and
Mhm.
YAML workflows, and that's it.
Yes.
Uh, and so that's exactly what Dagger aims to replace today. And so that's the reason why we started the company. I mean, the project and the product
Mhm.
later on.
For listeners who doesn't know what the CI/CD is, how would you explain to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery, or continuous deployment. Um, so what it means is that you have two sides. You have the CI that
Mhm.
continuously integrate your changes and run your tests, and this is where you do all of your validations at the code level and at the app level. So you build your application, you rerun some tests, you run some unit test, which is even before that, to
Mhm.
your code. So all of this is really CI. And then you have the deployment part, which is the part after CI. So usually the input of CI is code. Then
Mhm.
the output is usually a binary or a couple of containers or different
Mhm.
assets that you built at the end of your test if they passed, and all of your validation checks. Some of them could be manual actually. And then you have the deployment phase, which is taking this. So the input is the output of the CI, which is all of those
Mhm.
artifacts that were built, and the deployment takes care of deploying those artifacts and those assets to a deployment environment that can be a testing environment, a staging environment, or pre-prod, or even a production environment. And this whole process of CI/CD is really, you can see that as a loop that
Mhm.
constantly runs, pretty much like every time there is a change on the code, like you have to rerun this whole thing. And
Mhm.
this whole process, like one single loop, can take hours and even days in some companies. And it's
Yes.
very important because this is what's driving the velocity of your deployment team. So as efficient as you can be on this CI/CD loop, it
Mhm.
directly impacts the velocity for the company to ship features and ship value to customers. That's why it's very important, because um, oftentimes we see, we think about optimizing the development process in terms of hiring great engineers,
Mhm.
having great development tools, and then we think about infrastructure cost and speed and scalability and redundancy. But we don't often think about the efficiency of this loop in the middle, which is really CI/CD, and it's very important. I think more and more, oftentimes now, I see more and more people taking into account and understanding the importance of this loop in between. Because if it's not efficient, obviously, your prod can be awesome, and your development and your developers can be awesome. Like, it will go slow, and it won't be efficient, and you will waste time and money. And
Yeah.
so this is why it's very important for all companies to have a great and efficient CI/CD loop, actually. And we think that all the code that you write for your CI/CD and for your pipelines is code, meaning
Mhm.
it shouldn't be considered differently from the rest of your application code. And today, it's
Mhm.
not the case. In 99.9% of companies, you see the code of the application, usually with a native programming language, and
Mhm.
then you see all of CI/CD, or like an internal platform or something, some sort, which is often a bunch of pieces of custom scripts that are usually not tested themselves. They are
Mhm.
considered differently from the actual application. More importance is given to the application itself than to the software that ships this application, which is weird when you think about it.
Yeah, it
um,
is.
and what more and more we see this CI/CD as an actual software factory. It's basically
Mhm.
the internal factory that you need to assemble to ship your software efficiently, to ship your product. It's the factory
Mhm.
that builds your product. If your factory is not efficient and kind of falls apart, there is absolutely no way to ship a great product.
Hmm. That's interesting.
And so that's why we believe that you know you should have access to the same performant tools and the same language that you use to build your application every day, and that you test and debug, etc., than your CI/CD and actual software factory. And that's why Dagger today allows you to, well, first write your pipeline,
Mhm.
your pipeline in a native programming language, so you don't have to start with a YAML pipeline, or like a bash, a shell command, even, like on
Mhm.
any CI system. And also, you can run this pipeline locally on your local machine.